How's everyone doing today? Greetings. Well, as is usually the case these days, it is yet another high energy day. I'd like to welcome you all to the new Earth. Today's energies are amazing. Today's energies are grounding, they are freeing. If we are living within them, then we are seeing the manifestation of everything that we have hoped would come to fruition. And the reason why that's so is because the world has shifted. I'm sure all of you have noticed some changes in your lives. Whether those changes are for the good or for the negative, they are indeed for our best interests. Now, right now, the magnetosphere is unsettled, and it is unsettled because we are coming off of a geomagnetic storm that lasted about 2 days, where we had very, very high megaelectron incidences, where the magnetosphere was being affected, as was the Schumann resonance. And for those of us who have been doing the work, grounding into these new energies has been made a bit more difficult by the fact that we've been having to deal with issues that have been coming up within the context of these spikes in energy. But one of the things that has gone almost unnoticed by most people is that the resonance level that has increased in the past 2 months has not decreased at all. We are resonating, we are vibrating at a higher level, which means that everything seems to be imbued with more purpose. Colors seem to be imbued with more color. Light seems to be brighter. Darkness seems to be darker. Everything is intensified as if this were indeed a new Earth. Now, some of you may be listening to me right now and thinking, this dude is crazy. And you may be right. I may be insane off my rocker. But if I am, that means that many other people are too. And if we're all crazy together, that means that we have found a form of sanity, doesn't it? Well, be that as it may, someone asked me a question, and I think that now is a good time to address that question. I was asked what my opinion was about chemtrails and about the food that has been genetically engineered, or rather genetically modified. And I have put some time into studying those issues, so I know that they are a real thing. I have seen many videos about chemtrails, and I have seen many chemtrails here in central Texas and also in other states as well during the course of my life. Some places they crisscross the sky so much that they eventually make total cloud cover. Sometimes you'll see 1 to 5 just crossing the sky in a day. Some days you'll see none. Chemtrails can be differentiated from regular vapor trails or contrails that a plane leaves, because vapor trails, which are water, dissipate very quickly. Chemtrails stay in the sky for hours at a time, and they seem to create more cloud cover. Now, the explanation for chemtrails that makes sense to me is some form of attempt by the powers that be to block the incoming energies. The energies that those of us who are experiencing them now see serve a positive purpose. Now, of course, those who are of a scientific / psychopathic mindset do not necessarily believe in the positive effects that can come from more energy entering into Earth's system, because they have no idea about the connection between the energies and people's psychic mind states, their emotional mind states, their spiritual mind states, right? All they see is the actual physical manifestation of more energy, which means more heat, which means rising oceans, which means climate migration, which means refugees, which means brown people invading white countries. And so they are responding accordingly. And world temperament and developed nation impetus is toward consolidating their efforts in keeping the brown people out of the nations that their labor, that the labor of brown folks, and the goods and the raw materials that came from their countries helped to create. Well, for those of us who live in these countries in the North, the political and economic bastions of might that currently rule planet Earth, this is the developed world. This is the place where the technology has concentrated, and this is the place where power still spreads outwards from, like the arms of an octopus. Here in the United States, we remain empire. We remain the world's hegemonic power, and this nation's strength and economics were built upon the subjugation. First of Native Americans, then African Americans, and then the rest of the world as our empire spread out. Now, this is the model that other countries have taken into account and have exported themselves. You see China doing the same thing. They have taken over Africa in many instances. It can be argued that they have been successful. Their model of colonization is a bit different from the European model, but it seems to be colonization all the same. As the raw materials are leaving, the Chinese are building more infrastructure, but there are many proxy wars now going on the African continent, as there always have been, but now the primary actors have changed. On one side, you see China, you see Iran, you see countries like Syria, you see Russia. On the other side, you see the United States, you see France, you see the usual actors, Great Britain, etc., etc. So, chemtrails serve the purpose of cooling the earth slightly. But who is to say that they don't serve more than one purpose? Besides the cooling effect that they may have, the aluminum that some say these chemtrails are primarily composed of actually are harmful to wildlife. They settle on trees and they kill the trees. They settle on natural areas and they kill the vegetation, things of that sort. And aluminum in the body is no good, right? So our deposits of metals within our bodies may be increasing because of the chemtrails. And there is also the potentiality that nanotechnology is being spread with chemtrails as well. A while back, maybe a decade or so ago, there was this big deal about this new quote-unquote disease called Morgellons disease. And Morgellons disease was basically all of these small fibers that were popping out of people's skins, right? And they put them under microscopes and they'd see that they were moving on their own and they looked like plastic and they looked like fibers and it was just weirdness, right? But this stuff was coming out of people's skin. So there at one point was a theory that Morgellons was a form of chemical warfare and a form that was spread across the United States at least through chemtrails. I have seen other discussions about nanobots also being spread by chemtrails or into the atmosphere and into the environment that way, which may be connected to the Morgellons issue. And as far as my personal opinion is concerned, I do not know any of this stuff for sure. These are only things that I've read, and these are the ideas that have stayed with me, often years after reading about them. So whether or not they are happening, whether or not these are governments that are engaged in this practice, or whether or not it is corporations that are engaged in this practice, right now it doesn't really make a difference because primarily if these technologies are being used to shift the Earth's environment, and if they are being used to affect the Earth's population, then they have a negative effect upon life, upon this planet. And that always is going to affect the global majority more so than anyone else. And the global majority is, of course, a yellow and brown and black population, which is the goal of certain of these elite cabals that rule the world. Now, it is a fact that these cabals have been fighting for the past, millennia, but in a more intense and internecine warfare-like method for the past few years. There have been many who have championed different ways of moving forward in the world. I'm not going to mention any names. Those who know, those who don't, well, you can go and find out for yourself. But the general breakdown is that secret societies or cabals from the East are more concerned with creating a planet where they do not have to kill all of the brown and yellow and red and black people, where they keep these people alive, but the center of power just shifts from the west to the east, right? And of course, we know, for those of us who have studied long, that the cabals that come from the west, that come from Europe and the United States, primarily wish to depopulate the earth. Take the population of the earth down to what, 500 million or something like that, the Georgia Guidestones say. They talk about Agenda 21 and all that stuff, and the multicultural agenda, where brown folks actually gain a little bit of power. So terrible, right? Well, so these are the types of initiatives that we are dealing with every day of our lives, whether or not we address them or look at them formally or not. Now, the other thing I was asked about is the genetically modified food. Well, that's just another method of depopulation. The food that accumulates in our bodies, if it's genetically modified, there are certain aspects of those foods that provide ill health to those who eat them consistently over time. And that is most people who live in the West, most people who live off of a fast food diet or a supermarket diet. They say that the best food in the supermarket is the food that's along the outside aisles, which is generally the produce and the meats and things of that sort. On the inside aisles, you have the processed food and the processed goods for your household, like detergent and cleaning stuff, all that stuff that has poisons inside of them, right? So the genetically modified food is not food that we should be eating on a daily basis. Basically, we are all test tube babies, and we are all being experimented on as we speak. The global population is. Nobody knows what the outcome of these experiments is going to be, nor how the human population is going to shift over time genetically in response to these modified inputs that we are receiving through the food that we are eating and also through our environment. Is being changed. We are being genetically modified. Okay, that should give you some room for pause, something to think about. We are this planet. We are everything that happens on this planet. This planet is a part of our bodies. This is the thought process that becomes the normative thought process once you have internalized the new earth energies and you have shifted into a new way of being. This is the fate of oceanic humanity eventually, and it is the fate of oceanic humanity because movement is promised. Everything must change. Evolution must continue. Everything that occurs is occurring for a reason, and it is right and proper that it occurs thusly. Often for reasons that we cannot comprehend with our limited 3D comprehension. It takes higher dimensional understanding to see the full ramifications of any shift. There is nothing that occurs in isolation from anything else. Everything has meaning. Everything has resonance. Everything is related to everything else. So genetic modification sucks from our limited perspective right now, right here, but does it suck forever? Will it lead to something else positive and beneficial? It's often the case that negative things do turn into a positive eventually. We'll see if that is the case, or our descendants will see if that is the case someday. But right now, since it is our world and we have to live in it, we have to live with it, which means that we do what we can to shift it, to change it, and that is our input. That is our contribution to the world. We fight against these things, and all things have purpose. And our battles, our individual and collective battles, have purpose. So, this is our understanding, this is my understanding, and this is my reality. This is our reality. And we are here to stand against such things and to shift them out. But the first thing to shifting out negative potentialities is to see those negative potentialities, to recognize their effect in our lives. So knowledge is power. Once you have that knowledge, you must speak truth to power. All right, that's all I wanted to say. It's kind of hot out here, so my phone is kind of tripping, keeps going off every few minutes or every minute or so. So I'm going to go ahead and halt at this point, and I hope I was able to answer the questions that were given to me. If anybody else has any questions, go ahead and drop me a message or leave a comment for me, right? Join the Facebook group, Raw Sarah. Connect with me there, and we can talk about things in more detail. Be well, y'all. Peace.